I'll never forget that night. I've tried to shake it off, but something about it still haunts me. Maybe it's the way I felt the entire time, like I was being watched, hunted even. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It was a quiet night, just like any other. I'd been holed up in my apartment for days, so I decided to go for a walk. It was midnight and the streets were eerily empty, the kind of quiet you get only when everyone's asleep. The air was cool, the sky dark, and everything seemed normal. I didn't expect anything to go wrong. I walked down my usual path, past the same old landmarks, the rundown house with the boarded-up windows, the alley that always smells like garbage, the corner store with its broken sign. I was just walking, trying to clear my head. Nothing out of the ordinary, until I reached the park. It was empty like always, but as I neared the entrance, I saw him. At first I thought he was just another guy out for a late-night stroll, but something about him didn't sit right. He was standing in the dark, almost hidden by the shadows, but I could just make out his silhouette. He was tall, way too tall, and there was something off about the way he stood. It was like he was waiting for something, or someone. I didn't know why, but I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I tried to ignore it, kept walking, but my instincts kept screaming at me to turn around, to get out of there. I looked back for a second, and that's when I saw it. He had a knife in his hand. I could barely see it in the dim light, but the gleam of metal was unmistakable. And in that moment, I knew. I wasn't imagining it. Something was wrong. I quickened my pace, but when I heard footsteps behind me, I froze. They weren't mine. They were slower, deliberate, like someone was walking right behind me. I told myself it was nothing, that I was just paranoid, but the sound of those footsteps kept getting closer, closer and closer. My heart started to race. I turned around, half expecting to see some guy walking past, maybe just another late-night wanderer. But when I turned, he was there. The man. He was walking toward me now, his face barely visible in the shadows, but I could see the knife in his hand gleaming in the streetlight. And his eyes, they weren't just cold. They were empty, hollow. "Hey," I said, my voice shaking. "What do you want?" But he didn't answer. He just kept getting closer to me. My blood ran cold and I took a step back, then another, and another. But no matter how much faster I moved, he was still there. Every time I looked back, he was closer. He wasn't running, wasn't even hurrying, but he was closing the distance just by walking that slow, creepy pace. And that terrified me, more than anything. Panic set in. I started to run. I didn't think about anything, just ran as fast as I could, my footsteps pounding against the pavement, my lungs burning, but I didn't dare slow down. I could still hear his footsteps behind me, the sound of them following, getting closer. That cold, empty gaze of his burned into my back. I turned down the next street, hoping to lose him, but he was still there, following. It felt like I couldn't escape. No matter how fast I ran, no matter how many corners I turned, he was always behind me, always just a few steps away. I don't know how long I ran. It felt like forever. But when I ended up at a crowded intersection, I looked back and he was gone. I didn't see him anymore. I didn't hear his footsteps. The street was empty, just like it had been when I started my walk. I don't know how he disappeared, but I didn't stop to find out. I made it back to my apartment as fast as I could, slammed the door behind me and locked it. My heart was still pounding in my chest, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there, somewhere, watching me. I stood there for a while trying to steady my breath, but something felt off. I didn't know why at first, but then I noticed it. There, on my kitchen counter, was a note. It was simple, just a piece of torn paper with something scrawled in dark, messy handwriting. "You should have stayed away. I know where you've been." My blood ran cold. The words didn't make sense. What did they mean? Where had I been? My mind raced as panic gripped me again. I couldn't just stay here. He'd been following me and now he was in my house. I grabbed the note, shoved it in my pocket, and ran out of my apartment, not even bothering to lock the door behind me. I didn't care. I needed to be somewhere safe. I don't even know how I ended up at the cafe down the street. It was a small 24-hour place with a few people inside, but it was busy enough for me to feel like I wasn't alone anymore. I told them to call the police, told anyone who would listen that I was being followed. No, that someone had been in my house. People gathered around, concern written on their faces as I tried to catch my breath, hands shaking. The police were on their way, but I didn't feel safe. Not yet. I sat down at one of the tables, and the moment I had a second to breathe, I pulled the note back out. I had to read it again. Maybe I had missed something. As I read it, a sense of familiarity started creeping over me. The words didn't just feel threatening. They felt personal. And then, it hit me. A year ago, I had gone on a hiking trip with a few friends deep into the woods. We had stayed at a cabin in the middle of nowhere, just to get away from everything for a while. It was an unforgettable trip, but we'd stayed in that cabin for 3 days. I'd almost forgotten about it until now. But there was something strange about that trip. One night I had woken up to the sound of footsteps outside our cabin. When I peeked through the window, I saw a figure standing in the distance, too far for me to make out, but close enough that I knew someone was out there. At the time, I thought it was just one of my friends playing a prank, so I went back to sleep. But the next morning, my backpack was missing. It had just vanished. No one else had touched it. Later that same morning while eating breakfast, I brought up seeing that man earlier that night to my friends, and instead of saying they tried to prank me, they said that they were up late last night around the fire drinking, and out of nowhere that man appeared. He didn't speak at all. He just stood there. They kept telling him to leave, to go away, but he didn't listen. So eventually they started throwing their drinks at him, and it even escalated to a point where one of my male friends that were there punched the man in the face, knocking him down, causing him to drop something and run off. Since I reminded them about him, we all went outside to look and see what he dropped. It was a note, but to all of us at the time, it didn't matter. But now that I remember, the note is familiar to me because I've seen it before. I've seen this same hand writing before. That note was the same note that the man had left in my apartment, but I don't get why. Why me? I had no idea how he found me or why he was doing this, but as I sat there waiting for the police, I understood one thing. He wasn't done with me yet, and I wasn't safe. Not even here.